This is your Copic video tutorial on looking at blending, and we're going to talk about 3 different types of blending, as well as a modified blending technique that I personally use when coloring my images that I think is easier for beginners and experts alike. And we're going to work with this laundry image by The Greeting Farm that Paper Maniacs is now getting in the line, and it should be in pretty soon, so you may want to order it. It's fantastic, their images. And one of the things that I do differently is I use, I call it modified feather blending. And I'm going to go ahead and start with her bandana here. And I'm going to go ahead and go with the purples that we talked about, the V15, the V17, and the V12. And the way I do my coloring is that I start from the dark color to the light color, and I do something called a modified feather blending. And I start with a very light stroke and more of a flicking motion up. What this does is this puts more ink towards the bottom and less ink towards the top, which allows for easier blending. I then go into my medium color, which is a V15, and I blend into the color as opposed to blend in circles, which is more traditional. Okay. And as you can tell, instead of blending the whole image, I'm reserving a lot of white here. I'm then going to go with the V12 and blend into the V15. Once I feel like that's blended well enough, I can either go in with a lighter color, or I can go very lightly over that, and then you can see the gradation of color, and you can tell where the light source is coming from. One of the other techniques I use, and let me see if I can find a bigger spot here on her. Let's color the other side here, is I use something called using the side of the marker. And sometimes colors don't blend real well together. And I usually find it's colors in the same color family with the lighter color. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Oh, YG11 with YG13 doesn't blend all that well. They're right next to each other. Looking at it, they really should blend well. But what it does is if you use the side of your marker, which is this side here, it allows you to put on less color. And it allows the marker to blend without you pushing that color out of the way. Because the light color and Copics will push aside the dark colors because they have more solvent in them or more alcohol. One of the other, this is a real traditional way to color. I'm going to show you the traditional way, and we're going to work on, let's color this little, looks like a little blanket here. And traditionally when people color, they start with the light color, which would be the RV34, which we got in the kit this month. Coloring the whole image. There's a reason I'm showing you with the reds. Reserving no white. Coloring in a circular motion. Now, I'm not saying coloring in a circular motion is not a good thing. It is. Then you go to the R85, which is the second darkest color. Okay. And then the R59, which is our darkest color. Now you're going to go back with your RV34, which is the lightest, and blend all these back in. Okay. This is a traditional way to color. Now, the one thing I want you to take notice of, I don't know if you can see it, here and here, and I was coloring very carefully, here and here, the color has bled. They also say when you turn the image over, it should be evenly saturated. Now, you see the way I did, it's not as saturated as this way. Reds bleed a ton. And even though I was super careful, I had my red bleed out of my lines here. Now you can go in with your colorless marker, your colorless blender, and go ahead and get rid of those. And with reds, it's going to take a bunch of times. And you can see there is a gradation of color. What ends up happening though is the bleeding happens. The other thing that happens is a lot of times this looks very one note. There's not enough contrast while doing this. Let's look at this same image and let's look at this towel here and do the same colors and do blending with a modified feather stroke like I teach, okay? Come in with the dark. To medium color. Now that's not bleeding, I just got careless. Okay. And RB34. Reserving the white and going back very lightly over it. You can see it's really starting to bleed on the leg now too, over here. Now, to me, this is a nicer gradation of color. You see more shadowing, you see more differentiation, and there's much more contrast. Another blending technique that works really well, and we're going to go ahead and look at her hair real quick here, using the Y21, Y00, Y11 combination. Okay, let's say I've colored my hair and it's looking a little bit too similar. So I may want to go in and add a little bit more dark, and I can do that using a tip-to-tip blending technique. And that means is I take the tip of the darker marker and use the tip of the lighter marker to get some of that color off of there. It's a very subtle look. Another reason this works well is because color that doesn't necessarily blend well together, like we were talking about, that helps the colors blend better together.